Welcome to IDG Chit Chat Live for the week of January 4th, 2016. Today we'll be talking about Tuesday's third season premiere of Finding Your Roots. I hope you're ready because we might have spoilers. So here we are. It's Terry O'Connell, or I forgot your title now.
Executive.
I'm just not used to doing this. Poor Shannon has no voice, so I'm running things. I'm the main person today, so we'll see how this goes. I'm Jennifer Alford. I am publisher for the In-Depth Genealogist, and we're so happy to have some very special guests with us. Today we have Cheryl Passy and Melissa Barker. Would you guys like to individually introduce yourselves? Let's start with Cheryl.
Okay, hi, I'm Sherry, and I write the Carolina Girl Genealogy blog, and I'm excited to be here tonight and talk about the show.
Yay! All right, Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa Barker, and I'm a certified archivist and records manager, and I'm the archivist for the Houston County, Tennessee Archives. I'm also a professional genealogist. I lecture, teach, and write, and I also have a blog. It's called A Genealogist in the Archives.
Awesome.
Great blog.
Oh, well, you've read it.
I have.
Awesome. I have one reader.
It's always great when you find at least one, right? You know,
like, yay, I'm not writing just for myself.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I will certainly have to check out your blog now that I know about it.
Great.
I just recently was going through my Feedly reader and realizing how many millions of blogs I'm following and how many have not continued to write in the past year. And, you know, it's really kind of sad because some of my favorite blogs haven't written in over a year.
Oh, that is sad.
But, you know, it's real life gets in the way sometimes.
Sure.
And, you know, you gotta live with the living and go with that. So it's definitely, you know, I'm not a great person for writing blog posts, but I try and at least hit like every other month or so. No, I really I admire people who are diligent about writing blog posts every day or even once a week. I just think that's awesome.
How about the people that are writing 2 or 3 times a day?
Oh, imagine.
How do you get any research done? Yeah. How do you get any research done?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. So let's go ahead and dig into this episode. It was pretty awesome, I thought. We had 3 different guests, and you know, of course, I'm a big fan of Modern Family, as I can relate to it all too well. And so the first gentleman was the guy who plays Phil, and of course I didn't look up any of the names, so my apologies to the actors. And do you know it?
It's Ty.
It's Ty Burrell.
Ty Burrell.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. So, what did you think about it, Sherry, when you saw his story?
What got me is the fact that he had the slave and the slave owner in his ancestry, because it's a very good possibility that I may end up having the same type of thing.
Oh.
And I mean, what do you do with that? I mean, it's hard. It's hard. I do have ancestors that own slaves, and that is difficult. But we've done my mom's DNA, and it showed up that she's got a trace of African American.
Oh wow!
It's not a lot, but it's there, and so how else would that have happened? You know, and so I'm probably going to end up finding that somewhere.
Wow!
So that's a hard thing to. It's hard enough to see the listing of the slaves and to find the documents where they're being bought and sold, but then to realize that you've got both sides in your family, that's hard. It's a hard thing to wrap your mind around, because you don't want to, in your mind, vilify one side of your ancestry. Is hard because, you know, those are your ancestors. So it's a very difficult thing to come to deal with.
Well, and I imagine also, you know, as a white person and having Southern ancestors, you kind of
Mhm.
expect that you might have some slave owners in your
Right,
family.
right.
But to go that one step further
Yes,
and find out you have slaves in your family history, I
yes,
mean, that's just, a huge thing to wrap your mind around.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think he handled it quite well.
Yeah. Yeah, you could tell he was just
He's
like so, just trying to wrap his mind around
right,
it. And what
right.
I
And
thought,
to learn. Sorry, go ahead.
they were times great grandmother giving birth at the age of 13.
Hmm.
That was hard.
He was just like,
Yes.
just shocking.
Right. And I think for most people, I mean, they're not going to have that kind of detail. And so you can live in
Right.
that kind of fantasy land of, oh, but maybe, no, it wasn't. Maybe it was a mutual attraction. You can live in a fantasy land, but there it was, in print, the story, that's hard.
Yeah, no doubt. What do you think about it, Melissa?
I thought the Ty Burrell story was very good. I guess I've found and have done a lot of research for others and for myself that I've seen a lot of secrets and things like that in the ancestors that it didn't like surprise me or I wasn't shocked by it, but I was glad to see that he embraced it and that it was brought out. I'm a firm believer in uncovering all those stones and getting all those people out of the closet, all those secrets out in the open, because to me, it completes the person's story.
Sure.
I think everyone has a story and it should be told, and that's what our job is to tell the story. And I've known people that didn't want to tell the story and they wanted to keep it hidden, and that doesn't help matters at all.
No.
So I was really glad that it was brought forward and that Ty Burrell actually accepted it. And I wondered, what does he think now after the show and after things over, and then of course I always wonder, I wanted to see more documents, I wanted to see more of the research process, but that's what we all want to see more of, and it's only an hour show, and I know that, but as an
Right.
archivist, I just want to see the records. I want to see what it is that they looked at.
It'd be cool if they could provide us like with behind the scenes,
Yes.
documentation,
Mm-hmm.
Don't they
bonus
usually follow up with a
content for
blog?
genealogists.
Yes.
Would you say?
Don't they usually
Would
follow
you
up
say,
with?
Terry?
Don't they usually follow up with a blog post about some of the research?
They might. I don't know. I
I know
haven't checked.
DVR does, but I'm not 100% on finding your roots. But that
Yeah,
would be
that would
nice.
be cool.
Mm-hmm. It would be.
Who do you think
Yeah.
you are will actually tweet out some of the documents when the show's on? So you
Really?
can look at it while the show's running.
Huh.
I've
Oh,
done that a few times. Yeah.
I'm
That's
too busy
cool.
watching.
It's hard to watch because then you want to look at the document, so you always have to go back and watch it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Interesting.
That's why we all DVR it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that struck me about his story was, they, they'd had this family rumor of, that there was African Americans in their family, and then for them to go through the census and explain, well, in this census, he's listed as white. You
Mhm.
go back 10 more years, it's mulatto. Go back another 10 years, he's black.
Yes.
I think a lot of people may not have gone those extra steps to go further back
Mhm.
and would have missed that little, nugget there.
Absolutely. I've got a family that's a white family, but in one of the census they're marked as black. I mean, they're obviously, because I've got pictures, I know pictures. But they are a white family, and somebody made a mistake because on both sides of them were living, and so the census taker was just doing the
Copy
B
and
B
paste.
B B B.
Mm.
Yes, and so it
That's where
happens. Mistakes
that's
happen,
where
but you
that
got to keep going back and look.
that's where those multiple resources, you have to look at all these different
Right,
sources
absolutely.
and make educated
Right,
analysis of all the
right.
documents that you find.
Hmm.
I found one
Okay.
thing that I liked really well was Henry Gates. Several times through the show, he would mention what his theory was, and then he would say, "I was wrong," you know. And so I was actually glad to see that because, as researchers and as genealogists, we don't always get it right.
Hmm.
Oh no.
And so I was glad to see that human side,
Yeah.
that he admitted to that.
Yeah.
I think he probably had to throw that out there with everything that they've gone through the past year.
True.
I thought
That's
about
true.
that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, let's move on to the next woman, the artist, Kara Walker.
Kara Walker.
And were any of you familiar with her before the show?
I
No, I
wasn't.
never heard of her. Mm-mm.
No, I wasn't either. But, then as they were kind of going through her background and how, you know, she was a bit of a challenge to the way art has been displayed in the past and so forth, I was like, yeah, this woman seems pretty cool. I might have to look more into her and find out more about her. Um, what was your take on some of her story? Anyway.
I was interested in the part in the Aiken, South Carolina part because I have got
Yeah.
ancestors from Aiken, and the fact that this man had two families just around the corner from each other,
Oh yeah.
was something, and that he took care of his son, and they think the evidence is showing that he helped him, and he helped him become a butcher, and then he ended up with his own
Yeah.
market. I mean, that's something for that time period because people just didn't acknowledge that at all. I mean, they wouldn't even
Right.
talk to each other, let alone acknowledge that, this was his
Yeah.
son. So,
Well, it all could have been done kind of behind closed doors too, where people
it's
didn't
true.
know how it happened.
That's true. That is very true.
I really liked how they pulled out the map to really show.
Yes.
Mhm.
Is it
Yeah.
possible? Where
Yeah.
really?
Yes. I would like to look at that map and see if my ancestors lived in that area. I always think of things like that, when they're researching places where my ancestors are. Did they know them?
Why don't you tweet Skip and say, like, I need that?
I noticed that they didn't, that I remember, maybe you all do, that they didn't name any of the repositories where they found the records. Did they name any of the repositories?
Not that I remember. That's a good point.
Yeah, because like you were talking about, you'd love to have that map. I wonder how you would find out where they got the map. Obviously,
Right.
probably near Aiken, South Carolina. Maybe the
Probably, or
South
in the
Carolina
State Archives.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I found it interesting that they didn't
Mhm.
mention where they did their research.
I don't think he normally does, though.
Does he not? Okay. I don't remember from year to
That's
year.
more of a who do you think you are because they're taking you into the archives, where he's just presenting this is all we
Yeah.
have.
Right, right. The other thing I noticed was that when they went to look at her Brown family so she could discover her slave ancestors, they said that he was born and lived 30 years in Georgia, but then they said they looked at the South Carolina, and I think that was a mistake because then they said they looked at the South Carolina census, and I was like, wait a minute, so I think that was just,
Oops.
how are you finding the slave owner in South Carolina if he lives in, so I made it, but I watched it again, but I think that might have been just a mistake, but
Sure.
and I did see a couple of people posting on Facebook afterwards about how they thought that they were jumping to conclusions that they would go to look for the slave owner, and I thought that was interesting.
Oh.
That they were jumping to conclusions that,
Well, yeah, that's one thing
But
I've
where
noticed
would you
a lot.
go?
I like really it's your only lead
Right.
is that the surname might be the previous,
Mhm.
slaveholder.
Right.
So, granted, many African Americans chose different last names once they were emancipated.
True.
But when you're a researcher, it's really all you have to go on it
That's
sometimes.
true. Mm-hmm. That's very true.
Going back to the question about the repositories, Shannon, who is at home sick, is texting me to tell me repositories, but they did continue to show the Family History Library.
I thought they did,
Yeah,
but I don't think they said it was the Family
they
History
did.
Library.
No, they didn't.
Well, it totally was.
Yay, Shannon!
I recognized it. That's funny.
I found it interesting too that Kara Walker, and she kind of laughed at herself about it too, but that she had believed before this, maybe I don't have slaves in my ancestry, and then her and Henry laughed about that,
Yeah.
and it's I can imagine she probably wished that she didn't, and
Oh,
so
sure.
yeah, but and then he told her, he said, our people have slaves. So I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting that was even a thought, because I guess I don't, I'm not African American, so I wouldn't think you'd think that way, but I could see why you would think that way.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that and that they even discussed that. I had a conversation with somebody recently, and for the life of me, I can't remember who it was, but they had talked to a young African American man. He was dating a white woman, and his last name was very Irish. It was Mick something. And she said, "Oh, so you carry your slaveholder's name?" And he was like, "What?" He was mad. And he went back and asked his mama, and his mama was PO'd, and then they went to grandma, and grandma was like, "What kind of fool are you?" Of course you. Like generationally, as we get these younger and younger generations, they're just not really thinking about it. But we're as genealogists, we're like, well, of course that makes sense.
I also found it interesting that she had the ancestor, the free person of color from Charleston, who then was working for the Confederate Army. And she was right. It was for a buck. I mean, what he had to keep his business going, and then again, we didn't know how much pressure he may have been under too to fix their wagons and everything else. I mean, he may not have had a choice.
True.
Or maybe he did.
Or maybe
to make that buck.
Yeah, you just don't know. So
yeah. He was probably in a very precarious situation, and he did everything in his power to not be looked at in any kind of way that, so go ahead, fix the wagons.
Yes, he had to keep himself and his family safe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Which would have been quite difficult during those times.
Yes.
He was more important to the Confederacy fixing the wagons than if they were to have snatched him up and done something else with him.
Oh, true.
True.
Especially with so many men off fighting, they needed his services.
Mm-hmm. And he must have been good, because
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the very last person. We have, I finally looked it up, Donna Brazile. And I really enjoyed the whole, story of her last name.
Yes, I have Braziles in my family history, so I'm determined. I'm determined to see, because they're South Carolinians, and a lot of the South Carolinians came from North Carolina and from Virginia down. They came that way, and so I'm kind of interested to see if there's a connection. So
yeah,
I was so excited to see that.
Just goes to show you can't rely on today's spelling.
Oh, no. Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
I've seen it spelled all different ways. Every way that she had it spelled in her ancestry, I've seen it too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When I do those consultations, that's why I try to kind of beat it home. Spelling is nothing.
It's nothing.
It's more about the sound.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to remember her story. I don't remember
She,
much more than the
one
name.
of the things that I think one of the things that stuck out with her, with me, which is, I think it's an odd thing, when they found the little girl that was being sold for $900,
Yes.
to me, and I'm not an African American researcher specialist, but if I'm not mistaken, $900 was a lot of money for a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was 13. She was a breeding age, 13, 14, yep. Something. Yeah, and that's what it was. They probably felt that she was a good breeder.
Because I guess I thought that they paid more for young men who had a strong back that could do the work. I guess in my mind I'm thinking that is a lot of money for, especially in that day and time. $900 in the 1860s was a lot of money.
But think of how much money she could make them.
Right.
That's true. That's true.
That's what it was all about, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Donna cried when she found that out. There was one thing too that I think it was in the pre-show or when they first coming on or wherever I saw it. It wasn't in the actual show. She actually said, and excuse my language, she said that I'm pissed. But I don't remember seeing that in the actual show. I remember seeing it like in a pre-show or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I wondered why they didn't put it in the actual show.
I don't know. But I do think that they showed a good example of family lore as well, because they had the story that the colonel had gone, tried to sell them, and they held together, and they said we're not going to be separated, and they were able to prove that part of the story was right. The names had been combined, and there were some that got to stay together where the one was sold, and so I thought that was a really good example of taking that story, because usually some of it is true. And working with that. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes. But I thought that was a very good example.
What'd you say, Terry?
Yeah, what'd you say?
Stories always start with something. There's a big truth somewhere.
Right.
I've gotten twisted 500 times by the time we're getting it. But there's
a nugget. Yeah, there's a nugget somewhere. Yeah. Something to go on anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really good example.
And the fact that the researchers or Henry, whoever, figured all that out, then took her story and was able to find the pieces and put some pieces together and say, well, this is how they came up with this, or how it morphed as generations went on. I found that very interesting.
I kind of like how he seems to be putting it all together this year. Like the first episode was all based on family story.
Right.
Now next week I don't know if there's a basis to everything, but we do know that they're all of Irish heritage.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
It seems like there's going to be a common thread that's going to run through each episode.
Yeah. That will be nice. It'll be easier to follow, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get a little crazy going back and forth.
Finish
one.
Finish one, then go on to the other.
Me too. That was part of what I was thinking about as I was watching it. I was like, oh, how am I going to remember which story was with which? And, I'm like, it all blurs after a little while.
Yes.
I did like the one quote, though, that she said that her mother told her when she was being called names and things, and it was that it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to.
Yeah, that was
and I thought
good.
that was wonderful. I thought it was wonderful advice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wish
and
I
also
could
how
have advice.
and also how there, what'd she say, there was a chunk of fudge and a chunk of vanilla, but there was no fudge.
Fudge ripple in the middle.
That was great. There was no mingling.
She was a definitely very interesting person to do. I knew nothing of her, but I just like that, as they went and told her story, like, well, she became so active at a young age, and she just knew that was her life.
Yeah, I thought all three stories were very enjoyable and very teaching other people. I could see people watching and going, aha, instead of, where'd they come up with that? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it seems like in the past seasons it's been more about, here's your book of your family history, and I appreciated it more this season, or this one episode, that they definitely were more in tune with, well, what did this person want to find out about? You know, what was the family story that they were puzzling over? And they kind of took them through the process, you
Right,
know,
right.
in a way that, you know, most people could grasp and
Could follow.
understand.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And of course, then they did the 2 DNA, but they didn't do a DNA on, or they didn't show anything about a DNA for Donna Brazile. So they just confirmed with the other two that what they had guessed looked to be correct through the DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, they
I
really
liked that they
didn't have
brought it
much.
home with Ty Burrell by finding the descendant of the one guy who they
right.
were assuming was the ancestor to match up.
Right.
Yeah,
It's cool.
That was cool. And I like that they explained that, so that wasn't your DNA shows you are. You know, they explained how they figured that out instead of just saying it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was great. I'm sure Shannon, if she were on here, would say they should have had more about DNA.
Yes. Yes, she would. So you said it for her.
Yes. She has no voice.
Yeah, she's pretty bad off.
Anything else anyone would like to add? Is there about what their thoughts on the show? No?
I'm just glad it's on.
All right.
Oh, yes.
I think I'm just glad it's on because, you know,
Yeah, me too.
I do have my thoughts about, you know, more documents and showing the research process. And I think there should be a disclaimer that says how many hours were actually spent on the research.
That would be a good idea.
But putting that aside, I'm just glad it's on and showing people about genealogy and about, you know, knowing about your family history because, you know, that's what we all are into, and that's what a lot of us do as our profession. And so I'm just glad that it's on.
Yeah.
We need more shows like that.
You know, Melissa, I have to say that probably most of the genealogists out there agree with you. I know, again, going back to Who Do You Think You Are, they do the blog post where they've got records. They tell you the time. Val is always giving us, Valerie Lear is always giving us the time frame for Who Do You Think You Are, and it's over like 1,000 hours per episode. So now imagine like 3 people.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that they're hitting 3,000 hours.
They've got to be.
Yeah. So, but it'll be interesting. I'm gonna have to do some digging and see if anybody's just putting anything out there, or maybe we can send an email and see if anybody will share that data with us.
Yeah, that would be cool.
You know, the one other thing that I found interesting about Ty Burrell's family was the great-grandmother who came across to Oregon. I mean, she got that land on her own.
The land.
And
Yeah.
yes, and she came all the way to Oregon, and then she had to make it work and prove that she made it work. And, you know, and like they said, there were no other black people there. It was just her. So, you know, the fact that she could do that was amazing. What a strong woman.
And if anyone's done research, I've not done a lot of it, but if anybody's done research in the homesteading and what these people had to go through to keep their land or to get the land, it's absolutely amazing. And he even said on the show, he said a lot of them didn't get to keep it.
Didn't.
Yeah, and
right,
so we say for a woman, she was a very strong woman. But
yes,
it's amazing.
A woman in that time period, you know, a woman in that time period,
yes,
you know, had to be something else to be able to do that with the obstacles that she had.
All right, because like you at least had to be able to build a house.
Yes.
Plant some trees. I mean, I'm going back to the house on the prairie here. They had to plant some trees. She had to at least get some crops into the ground.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
That's right.
That's minimum.
That's a lot of work.
Seriously. Wow.
Well, it makes sense then. If she was the only woman of color in that area, it makes sense then that his family. I mean, that's obviously where it turned from being an all African American family into, you know, mixed race and going forward.
I would think so. I would think so.
Did you all see the graphic when they were showing the homesteading property that the government had sold, the map?
Yes.
With the amount. I was actually surprised at how much property
Mm.
that the government had given away. And I looked at my husband because my husband was watching with me, and I said, well, how come none of your answers went that way? Because all of his ancestors because I researched his and mine, they've been pretty much dirt farmers and sharecroppers. And I'm thinking, no, they could have had land if they'd just gone west.
Yeah, mine all stayed put, so none of them ventured anywhere.
Yeah, but you have to consider it was very, very difficult and very expensive.
Oh, yeah.
I made that trip.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And maybe some tried. They just didn't succeed.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's probably very. All right. Well, anything else? I think we've reached our time limit. So I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight. It was great having you on the show.
Thank
and,
you.
Hearing your points of view. We really appreciate it. And next week's Chit Chat will be on the upcoming episode with Bill O'Reilly, Soledad O'Brien, and Bill Maher. It should be an interesting one. I've heard Bill Maher and Bill O'Reilly are related.
Oh!
I don't know.
I'll have my notebook out for that Irish research.
So anyway, we're looking forward to that one, and we'll have another Chit Chat coming up next week. So remember, we would love to hear from you. Please drop us a line in the comments below, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or send us an email at editor@theinDepthGenealogist.com. On that note, have a great day, and remember to go in depth with all of your ancestors. Bye.